If you don't know the name Cosworth,
And super goes through on the inside. A brilliant bit of driving.
let me give you a little introduction to quite possibly the greatest engine builders in history. What was meant to be a passion project for two gearheads in a tiny shed in London, England, exploded into a global operation with wins in not only Formula 1, but also domination at the greatest endurance race of them all, Le Mans. So how did Cosworth outgrow this side hustle setup to become one of the leading names in motorsport engine development? Well, let's find out, because my name's Alex, and you're watching QuattroCam. If you needed one sentence to make it clear exactly who Cosworth are, it's this. Cosworth has collected 176 wins in Formula 1 as an engine supplier, making it the third best engine provider behind Ferrari and Mercedes. Let me say that again. Two dudes in a shed, Ferrari, Mercedes. Oh, and they also built the most successful endurance engine of all time, won rallies, and dominated the Indy 500 for 10 years straight. But how did this all happen? Well, our story begins in 1958 in a scruffy shack in North London, when two racing mechanics with auto giant Lotus decided to turn their hands to something new. It is important to point out that founders Keith Duckworth and Mike Costin didn't start out to build a company. In Mike's own words, it must be possible to make an interesting living messing around with racing cars and engines. And with that thought-provoking question in their minds, they set out to do just that. It is also the reason why Mike still worked with Lotus 4 years after the duo started. This, after all, was a side hustle for the pair, a passion project that did not cost the world to maintain. By 1962, Mike officially left Lotus after seeing out his contract in order to give his full attention to the tiny upstart, and with this, Cosworth was born. The partnership was a blend of two opposite personalities that worked perfectly together, like two different parts of a machine. Duckworth was an intense thinker, the kind who was consumed by his thoughts and cared less about his surroundings. As a result of his self-absorption, he had a quirk of being bitterly rude to anyone he disliked or didn't respect. Costin, on the other hand, brought balance to the team. Unlike Duckworth, he was patient, practical, and had a thorough approach to work. Despite the stark differences in personalities, the partners found a way to work as a team with a shared philosophy of the company as an outlet for their desire to play around with racing cars and engines. Sort of a Jobs and Wozniak of engines, you might say. So, in the 1960s, they mostly focused on modifying existing engines and doing some jobs for Lotus. The most significant job for Lotus was the extensive work they did on the twin-cam engine, which at the time powered not just road cars, but saloon car racing and rallying as well. Despite efforts to stay hidden in their North London shack, their work attracted interest. This interest was not from the British Isles, but rather from a giant automaker somewhere on the other side of the Atlantic, a little outfit called the Ford Motor Company. At the time, German and Italian car makers dominated Formula 1 racing. American brands just didn't have the same power in Europe as they did stateside. Ford wanted to change this and became the first American car company to take a shot at making racing cars that could compete with their European rivals. But since they had little experience in making racing car engines, they decided to outsource the production to an independent company with a proven record. At the time, Porsche was already a well-known independent race car engine maker with a solid reputation. However, for some reason, Ford chose to take a gamble. The Ford-Cosworth partnership started with some ambitious work on Ford's 1-litre and 1.1-litre Formula Junior engines. The engine they produced would go on to win and was one of only a handful of engines to break the 100 horsepower per litre barrier. But the big break for Cosworth would come when they designed an engine completely from scratch. Their bold move was so successful that it attracted their former boss, Colin Chapman of Lotus, and Ford's top PR man, Walter Hayes. To replicate the results of their flagship engine, Chapman, Hayes and Cosworth formed an alliance that would give birth to the legendary V8 DFV Formula 1 engine. And just like the first one, the DFV Formula 1 engine became an instant hit, dominating all Formula 1 championships. It was the engine that helped power the great Jim Clark to victory, a man we are set to cover very soon. As a matter of fact, it would even go on to gain the reputation of the most prolifically successful racing engine in Formula 1 history, with 104 155 wins, but this success was not limited to just Formula 1, as the race car engine also went on to dominate Indy Car racing, Le Mans, and many other sports car events. The turbocharged DFX engine would hold its own for 10 years in Indy Car racing, including a 10-race winning streak. Ford was so pleased by the success of their investment of a little over $100,000 that they extended the partnership, giving rise to other exciting engines like the 4-cylinder BD family that ran the Ford Escort and the Weber engine for cars like the Cortina. The BD engine family was a huge success for Cosworth, finding its way into the Escort and even being used in the RS200 Group B rally car, both iconic cars in their own right. Without even desiring it, Cosworth had built up a reputation as the race car engine builder, and the general narrative about the company became that Cosworth could do anything, anywhere, in no time at all. However, despite the hype and the feats they had achieved, one thing still held them back from fulfilling the predictions of car pundits. Cosworth's operating philosophy, which catapulted it to unimaginable success, gradually started to form an obstacle on the company's path to real progress. We are hoping to make real progress towards our goal of 15,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So if you've enjoyed this video, why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel? Help us reach this goal together. Now, back in the world of Cosworth, the setup that had helped them become so successful was now holding them back from growing. When Keith Duckworth and Mike Costin started Cosworth, they never intended to take over the world. They simply wanted to mess around with engines and make some money on the side. As a result, from the get-go, Cosworth was not built to grow into a big car company, so each time an expansion opportunity came their way, they'd turn it down. However, things quickly changed, and Cosworth became a unicorn within the car industry, which meant that they couldn't hide anymore. Huge companies like Ford were at their doorstep, waving huge contracts, and with each day that passed, expansion looked inevitable. First off, even at this point, Cosworth still had only 4 staff members: Keith Duckworth, Mike Costin, and 2 employees who joined along the way, Ben Rood and Bill Brown. Secondly, they still built their engines in a scruffy shack where they started. If they were going to keep up with the demand, then they had to expand. And expand they did. Cosworth speedily set up a factory, employed more staff, and started to function like a real company. Ultimately, these first expansion efforts eased the burden on Keith and Mike. But for Keith, this would be too little, too late. Worn out from the pressure of having to do all the work themselves, Keith's health finally caught up with him, and he suffered a heart attack. This did not stop Keith from coming back to work though, but per his doctor's stern warning, a lot had to change. So the pair hired Alf Vickers to handle the day-to-day running of Cosworth, and then gave recruits more responsibility with new designs. By 1980, Cosworth was acquired by the United Engineering Group. Keith and Mike continued to work for Cosworth, but the company was already so far away from what they had built. Under the United Engineering Group, Cosworth became a corporation, expanding even further, with loads of new factories in the UK and the United States. And from a few engines a year, this one small company started to manufacture about 8,000 engines annually. In this time, Cosworth produced even more iconic engines. They worked their magic on the Mercedes 190E, the DTM race car, as well as producing the YB engine series. These engines would find their way into the Sierra RS Cosworth, a car so fast in its day that they became uninsurable due to them being the go-to getaway car for high-end robberies. The Sierra would add yet more race victories for Cosworth too. By 1990, after working for 10 years under new ownership, Mike and Keith finally bid farewell to the company they had built. Cosworth was now in the hands of Alf Vickers. Unlike Keith and Mike, Vickers wasn't keen on race car engines, so even though Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna were dominating the Formula 1 Championship with Ford V8s, Cosworth would eventually expand fully into road car engines. Under Vickers, Cosworth would build FB power units for Ford's Cologne V6, as well as pushrod V8 engines for Bentley and Rolls-Royce. After 8 years at the helm of affairs, and to the surprise of car enthusiasts, he sold Cosworth to the German super company Volkswagen Audi Group. For car enthusiasts, the acquisition marks the end of Cosworth's race car engine division. Volkswagen Audi Group had no plans to continue the division, thus putting an end to their race engine making days. However, this all changed when Ford swooped in and took the racing division for themselves. This new arrangement came with one awkward feature though. You see, the Cosworth factory in Northampton handled both road engines and race engines, which made perfect sense when both divisions were run by the same company. However, with different companies companies now owning each of the divisions, there had to be a separation, and to achieve this, both parties agreed to a physical barrier separating both sides. This dividing wall was eventually known as the Chinese Wall. Ford ran the race division from 1998 until 2006, when its worldwide financial problems forced it to sell Cosworth to two American businessmen. Under this management, Cosworth has maintained its relationship with Ford, but it also expanded beyond car engines, with an electronic subsidiary along with high-tech machining plants in the UK, the US and the Far East. It was recently commissioned to build the 6.5-litre RA engine for the Aston Martin Valkyrie. You know, this thing. And legendary F1 designer Gordon Murray, the man behind the McLaren F1, which you can watch a little later over on our channel, commissioned Cosworth to make the engine for his T50 hypercar, itself a thing of automotive beauty. Just listen to this. In the end, the amazing story of how Cosworth started out as a two-man band in a scruffy shack in North London that grew to become a multinational company and top consultants on all things race and road is one that will be told for decades to come. It just shows you what a small dedicated team can achieve when given the chance. One small team we hope you will give a chance is us. We've been working behind the scenes to improve this content. So if you've enjoyed this video, why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel? From there, why not check out all the other videos that we have to offer? We are sure you won't be disappointed.